Look here, alright? We've only got less than 10 years until the effects of climate change are entirely irreversible, and it doesn't look to me like anyone is going to do anything about it. I mean, even the moderate reforms that someone like Bernie Sanders or AOC or these other liberal folks bring up fundamentally do not address the majority of concerns that climate has. They do a lot of good things, but it is not enough, not nearly enough, to be able to address the coming crisis, especially not when, countries like Russia directly benefit from climate change. In fact, it's one of their political motives is for climate change to ensue because they get more ports open up from the ice melting, that they can have more effective trade routes. And so Russia doesn't particularly care about climate change either. And the only way we're going to be able to solve a problem like this is by uniting the entire world to reduce carbon emissions and pollution and so on. And we're not going to do that. We're just not. Most likely it's going to be Elizabeth Warren gets the nominee, and then she loses to Trump. And if Bernie won, well, he's probably not going to do very much either, because, like I said, his plan doesn't do enough. The kind of very radical change that we would need is not going to be seen in electoral politics. You're just not going to get it. The only way, I think, we could get out of this coming climate disaster is by centrally planning the economy through the use of computers, through having a mass movement in which the state is organized not to focus on profits, but to innovate, to focus on alternative sources of energy that are not overproduced. You look at the oil industry now. Right now, the USA is importing oil from Oman and Saudi Arabia and these other countries, despite the fact that we've become energy independent for quite some time. We were energy independent under Obama, but we still import oil that we produce so much. The world produces so many barrels of oil a day that we have way too much. And right now the oil companies are seeing this as a problem because there's so much oil that's being produced that the prices are going down. And if the prices are going down, their profits are going down, and it's not looking good. Is that because so much is being produced, they're looking at a potential economic crisis happening in the realm of oil right now, because usually what happens when there's an economic crash, the housing bubble and these kind of things, it's poverty amongst plenty. Is that in the housing crisis, so many houses were produced that people couldn't sell them. And so what we have is a system where people don't produce things in order to use them. The reason things are produced is so they can make profits. And paradoxically, what results from that is that we have so many houses being produced that more people are homeless. We have so much oil being produced that the people who are making it are worrying, how are we going to make our profits go up when there's so much oil? When what should really be focused on is producing less and just producing what's needed. If we produce what's needed, then our needs are taken care of. We shouldn't have to focus on, the profit motive at all, when what really matters is how can we use these resources? Do we have these resources? A rationally planned economy would focus on that, so we have the ability to produce less and provide more, but we don't. And so as a result of that, this sort of profit motive in the system that incentivizes producing more whilst providing less makes it to where there's going to be a crisis. There always is. The crisis of overproduction inherently leads to economic crash, and this is what happened in 2008 and the Great Depression and so on. So I don't particularly see hope for the climate crisis because we're always just going to be overproducing, and that's incentivized in the profit motive in the system. And there's no politician who's going to show up and just fix this. It's just going to be that way. And so the idea that like we should have faith for some kind of political change being made, I think is kind of naive, because even if you said like there's some kind of revolution in France or one of these other countries that somehow topples the government, in a fairly short span of time, well, that's only one country, Like, we're not going to be able to convince the entire world to completely rethink how they organize their economies in order to save the planet. It's just not going to happen. And so the idea that there's some kind of hope for climate crisis being solved is a little bit silly. There's tweaks around the edges that we can make. There's a few countries, mainly China, around the world that have actually reduced the global carbon emissions. And was it in 2016, China reduced the global carbon emissions. They cleaned up the air and stuff, so the skies are blue in like Beijing again, for instance. There's a lot of great stuff that they've done to be able to mitigate the crisis, but they're one country, like, for all of the achievements that they make in the realm of climate, like, they're not going to fix the situation in the entire world. And so I greatly commend what they've done, but like, there's no way, there's no way that that them doing all of these things is just going to catch up for everybody in the world. And so the idea that there's some kind of hope is pretty futile. There's not any. There's really nothing we can do. And I follow this stuff pretty closely, is that I'm really interested in politics, but I don't really debate anymore the way that I used to. So I used to get into arguments with people about this stuff, and it was kind of like a Socrates-esque thing, is I just liked picking people's brains. But people who talk about politics are really, really irrational. They react very emotionally to things, and they like to insult you, which is okay. In and of itself is fine. It just depends on who you're talking to. But like, when I hear these people have these conversations, and I see it all the time, like, I think the only way having these conversations can really make sense is if you do it in the most detached way possible. Because it really is a meaningless discussion. But there's no reason to get emotional over it, because it's not going to do anything. Like, nothing you say, nothing you do is going to influence the global order as it stands. You're just kind of speaking into a void. And so what we live with now is a world that is not going to be fixed, that's on its way out, and I'm kind of fine with that at this point. Like, you can have the delusion that I'll make these little actions and buy eco-friendly food at the grocery store, or I'll vote this year or something, but I don't see any change being made. They'll probably cheat the elections again. The person that they'll get in there is ineffective anyway. You can't get this many countries with this many religious and political differences to come together and fix this problem. It's not going to work. And so the idea that there's any hope whatsoever, I think, is a little bit silly. And at this point, I've basically just decided, well, I'm already an isolated person anyway, so there's not much I can do in the first place. But holding on to any idea that there's anything that I could change, I've essentially let go of. I don't know, I'm kind of more at peace realizing that the world is going to end. It just hang out in a cold place like Alaska or something, and then just wait for the world to fall apart. It feels more peaceful in a way. Like everything is, everything's going to end eventually. It's like the great equalizer. There's one great equalizer that we all have, and it's the fact that we're all going to die one day. And in this sense, it's going to be by a horrendous climate disaster and wars and stuff, but I just kind of want to sit in my house and watch it all go by. I dream oftentimes about having a cabin or just a nice little home near the woods, or maybe in the middle of the woods. It's hard to get good internet in the woods, so maybe not in the middle of the woods, but just having a little house that's my own, that I own, my own house in the middle of Alaska, or one of these cold places throughout the world, just somewhere cold in the world, and having my own little house, and just going on the computer each day, seeing what's going on, making these videos, writing, going to a little room where I can sit down and read and play video games and go around and explore, during the wintertime in the snow, whenever. Go to the market, come out, bring food home and eat. And as all of these political changes happen, the next war happens, or the next climate crisis happens or something, a tsunami or something, just sit in my little house and watch it all go by from the safety of my window or my computer screen or wherever. Just be completely alone as the world caves in on itself. I find that really comforting in a way. I like the idea that the little things aren't so little at all. The little things encompass the big thing that is your life. I know people who, they focus so much on big events. They want big events to be their next high. I'm always chasing the next high, I've heard people say. That's kind of like the normal fag mindset, isn't it? Is that normal fags, they just want to do drugs and wait for the next high to come about. I must be emotional all the time. It's like they're balls of emotional insanity. And I kind of like just doing my little things every day. I play the video game today, and maybe tomorrow I go to the store and let's look out at the snow and take some pictures of it. Let's just lay in my bed today. I don't know. I like that more. I don't like that for so many people life has to be a constant cycle of big events happening. I just want to stay in my house until the world ends. I think that's a comfy existence, I think being able to have the freedom and autonomy to just have my own little place, my own space that's mine, that belongs to me, and waiting for the world to end, in a lot of ways is kind of comfy. Now maybe it's the doomer mindset here, but I've wanted political change for a long time. Now, I'm really passionate about political change. I care a lot about studying theory and history, but there's also another part of me that kind of wants the destruction in a sense. I don't really find the fact that the world is going to end as being depressing. Now, other people, they think, well, what's the point of me doing anything each day because my ideals, my beliefs aren't going to be enacted and everyone's lives are going to end and there's going to be so much suffering, and I understand that. I know those things are true, but why does it matter? Well, I guess that's the difficult thing for me to necessarily grasp, is that giving up at this point is just so easy, because to me the logical conclusion should be to give up. That there is no hope, so why hold on to it? Now, what's the point of holding on to it when the logical conclusion should be just to give up? But I know people who care so much about their own ideals that it's almost impossible for them to stop, because they just want, they just want to find the truth. They just want to be able to enact the most ideal world. And I'm not really about that. I think having a more ideal world would be better. I care about justice, I guess. But there's this deeply beautiful, almost poetic aspect to all of our lives ending at some point together. And I guess maybe that's what I find comfy about it. I know other people who have the same mindset, who I've read on image boards. On image boards, I've read these people's perspective is that they've said, I just want to stay with someone I love before the world ends. Actually, I think Digi had a video where he talked about this. I think it was called like when you're so self-obsessed you marry your clone or something like that. Is that he had said that the world is this nihilistic hell, but if you're married to somebody, you have someone to live through the world with you together, or some kind of virtue signaling stuff. I don't really understand that mindset. In my eyes, it's more beautiful to just be alone through the tragedy. Spending the time with someone else, I think, just kind of waters it down, because at that point, I don't understand the point of it, I guess. There's a kind of beauty, though. There's a kind of beauty to the disaster. That I like the idea of just being there. Just being there as everything unfolds, watching, being an observer as I've always been. I've given up at this point.